you know what? You know what made me think of like 90s R&B more is did you listen to the B&A ending theme song that I sent you?
No.
The new Trigger anime, the one with
No.
Okay, whatever. You didn't listen to it, so there's nothing to talk about. Great. Let's move on to Miyazaki. Fucking asshole.
I mean, I was just telling you the truth, but anyway. What is up,
No,
Internet?
no, that's fine. The truth does not always help.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Say it again.
What is up, Internet?
I talked over you. God damn it.
Oh, my God. Fuck it. My name's Brando. His name's Christopher House. Welcome to the Otaku Remix Podcast. Chris, talk over me again. I will slap you through the Internet.
You can't stop me. We're not in the same room.
Or in the same state either. But
nope.
But I feel your presence every day. Anyway. On today's episode, we decided we'd go back in time a little bit to a wonderful, simpler time, 1997. As Chris, you told me something funny the other day as we were kind of conversating about anime and life, and you were mentioning you have never,
as we do,
philosophize. I'm basically, Plato, and you are, who's that guy who just shits himself in public? Diogenes?
No, that's
Diogenes?
me, I guess. At Diogenes.
Yeah. That's you.
Wow.
Anyway.
So while I was shitting myself publicly, I mentioned to Brando that I have never seen a Miyazaki or Studio Ghibli film, despite, and he's like, "What kind of credentials did I set up for this podcast co-host?"
Oh man!
And so we figured out our differences, and he decided, all right, we're gonna fix this. He told me to watch Princess Mononoke. Your favorite Miyazaki film?
Yeah. I kind of like pondered it for a second, and like it was the first one that I saw, so I felt like that would be a good parallel for you, to kind of see what your experience would be like, and also, more or less.
Now, you did not see it in theaters, though. Correct?
I did not. I had watched it.
Okay. Yeah, because this came out in '97.
Yeah, which would have made me a bit young, and my parents probably disinterested in taking me to that film. Honestly, I would probably be disinterested at that age. But no, I saw it on a VHS at a friend's house when I was like 14 or 15.
Oh, okay.
Which was completely fine. It still captivated me heavily. But let's hear your impression first, because I am still curious, because you kind of left me with little to no explanation of what your thoughts were. The night you watched it, I was like, so? And you're like, it okay, it good. And I'm like, son of a bitch. So
I'm sorry. A, we need to reserve our ideas for this podcast, and B, I was like in the middle of shit. So
that's true.
Yeah, I texted him, is a good movie, and gave a big thumbs up, and then moved on with my life. And unfortunately, that's kind of like the big takeaway from the movie is that I watched it and like, it's a good movie. It was frustrating to find, because as part of Disney's ownership, you cannot rent it anywhere that I was looking. So I think I'm gonna end up actually buying the film, because I saw it through nefarious circumstances.
Yes.
But I think I will actually end up buying this film, just because it's another, in my mind, it's another identity of anime, if you would, where it's like, you have like Trigger has established themselves as their own identity in the anime industry. And obviously Ghibli has, decades ago done the same.
Yeah.
But for me, I just didn't really know what the experience was like until now. And if anything, the only time I've seen Ghibli is like stuff like Ni no Kune, which is like fine, but kind of has it's
sort of homogenized derivative.
The stigma of the homogenized derivative version of it. And like, you kind of want the original stuff to understand where the love and nostalgia for this style comes from. And Princess Mononoke definitely shows it. It's really whimsical. It's really magical. It's while not being a black and white movie, and I mean in terms of like the morality, it's still fairly straightforward, because you just have characters who have clear motivations, and those characters interact with other characters with different motivations, and that's how conflict arises. It's not like you need to know the history of the Edo period of Japan to understand the conflicts going on. No, it's just like this guy wants to defend his village and then gets cursed, and thus he goes on a quest to cure the curse, and then things just develop from there. And that's what I kind of really appreciate about it. It's simple, but also thought provoking.
Yeah, it has like its own kind of modest complexities to it. There's like a sort of philosophical edge to it. Like the drama is all underlaid with like Miyazaki's kind of perception on like humanism, and there are never like moral simplifications to like the characters' motivations. There's just different groups with different purposes in the story. There's like, and the setting is interesting, and for me, obviously the impression was made many years ago, but it definitely did captivate me for a lot of reasons, not only from its like thematic and the meaning of it, behind the story, but just in general, like the overall experience. It's like to watch a feature-length animated film of this quality was something I hadn't done up until that time. And so like while rewatching it recently so that we can talk about it and I kind of have fresh thoughts, I was like, besides the nostalgia and the wonderment, and I was like, man, this is like why I enjoy movies, why I enjoy stories, why I enjoy film, and especially the animated sort, because of the ability to kind of have this very freeing ability to kind of share the essence of stories that sometimes live actions aren't able to capture, because it's freed from gravity and the normal constraints of things. So yeah, no, this movie is fantastic, and obviously spoiler ahead for a 23-year-old film. So yeah, not really a whole lot of
yeah, but at the same time, I wouldn't. Yeah, if you do get spoiled on something, I would still watch it, because like it's much more of an experience than it is a like list of plot events.
Yeah, definitely,
you know what
definitely.
I mean?
It's a very unique story for many reasons, not only being its structure, but yeah, I think it's worthwhile to experience, even just purely for like a visual splendor. Like this movie is a.
What's funny, you say it's unique. It's unique in the modern sense, in the sense of like you don't hear too many stories like this anymore. But it honestly reminds me of like even classic Disney films, where it has a very like the structure is that of a fairy tale, where you start in this world that is very well lived in and has these, has a small village of people that live on each other, and one boy has to go out and explore the rest of the world.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like and it just kind of by examining the world through the artist's eye. And by that, I mean just looking at the visuals that they present you can kind of understand how this world works and where people come and go from.
Yeah, yeah.
There's never any moments where people are sitting down and giving you like a lecture on the, expository facts of the world.
Yeah.
There's never a moment like that. You just kind of stumble upon these events, and you're left to interpret and understand them for yourself.
Yeah, that's
just as the main character does.
That's really how I felt about it too, because like that's when I say unique, I definitely mean it in the sort of the atypical perspective that you get in most films and most narratives in general. This movie, the way it kind of like portrays the plot, it feels more like mythical history than this action and melodrama that it would probably be marketed as. So you get all these different sort of very fairy tale-esque elements, but it's presented in a way that's, I wouldn't say matter of fact, but just like very natural, and it feels like a very organic world. So yeah, I really enjoy a lot of the imagery and just the elements of the set in general. It's very like very fairy tale, like the setting of it. It's like it is an epic in its own way. It's set in feudal Japan, like right at the dawn of the Iron Age, and it's like a time when like some men lived in harmony with nature, like Yoshitaka, and then like there's others who like attempt to tame and defeat it, like Lady Eboshi and everybody else in between. So it's a really cool set.
It's funny you say like they live in harmony, but it's only so like throughout the conflict of this movie kind of arises when man suddenly finds a way to overpower nature by using guns and using the iron that is absorbed from the earth, and like everything else that you see everything you see before then is how it's not that like man chooses to live harmoniously with nature. It's that man is on the same footing as nature, or on the same footing as the rest of the world. There's no one tool they have as a people to overthrow the others.
One thing,
and what's nice about that distinction is that the people in this film who are in other films would be considered like the antagonist through and through. The industrialists, the gunsmiths and stuff like that. They're still seen as people in this movie, except that they just have, they have power and they're using it to go even further, like push their agenda even farther. And I don't know, it's just nice that it's not like so black and white as it would be in other films.
Yeah, nobody is really implicitly wicked in this movie. Even, like, obviously the ramifications of their actions are, somewhat negative towards nature by the end, where they're slaying gods.
More than someone.
Yeah. But their intentions aren't like particularly foul. Obviously, like, you could say there are character flaws, like Lady Eboshi being too ambitious or what have you. But like the people she serves, like normally where they could be kind of dressed up in this sort of very antagonistic color. You see her, she's like serving women who are like used to be in brothels, but instead are made to kind of like be leaders in their community and workers. And then you have people like the lepers, who are the gunsmiths, people who would normally be shunned by society, are kind of taken in and given purpose again in life. And everyone in her community and her society appreciates Lady Eboshi, even though she could be considered to be a villain in her own right to some degree, but not really. Nobody's really given a full statement on good or evil, except for really the super altruistic Ashitaka, who's just here to literally help everybody almost.
Yeah.
Even Jigo.
But at the same time, he's a demon within his own regard. Like, he gets the curse from the beginning, and like, I didn't realize this movie was going to be as violent as it was.
Yeah, it's surprising, honestly.
It's interesting. It only really happens in that first samurai showdown that happens in like the first 20 minutes when he like uses an arrow to lop off some dude's head. But like, you see, like, when you hit somebody with an arrow, it shouldn't just cut their head clean off. And I think they did it to have like a really over the top moment, but at the same time it was also to show that like, Ashitaka has this capacity for violence in him that's being kind of arisen by the demonic influence that he takes on when he kills the demon early in the movie. And like, that's the knowledge he has going forward, is that someday he can fall prey to the same thing that the god that he kills fell prey to. And it's only through that understanding that he's able to go forward and like have this altruistic mindset. It makes him a lot less contemptible than a lot of other altruistic protagonists that we've seen in these kind of features, who are just good because they're good. Like God instilled them the perfect moral virtue. Ashitaka just has a better understanding of the world because of his experiences. And the only thing I'll say about him that I thought wasn't fully developed was his relationship with San, the titular Princess Mononoke in this movie. Because I felt like their relationship, which kind of is like romantic towards the end, wasn't developed that well.
Yeah, it was rather soft.
Maybe that's just me.
No, you're completely right.
I wouldn't even say it was soft. It was just rather sudden.
Yeah.
It was like suddenly, oh, you mean so much to me. It's like, what you do? Like, what the?
Yeah,
what
there's
the
like, there are a few moments that really define it. Obviously, it could have been developed a little bit more. Obviously, also, it wasn't. If you've seen the film,
I would like to say it could have been, but like at the same time, the movie is like 2 hours and 15 minutes, and it's dense.
It's pretty dense.
So I don't know if it could have been developed more. I just think, and maybe this is just because I listened to I started on the sub, and then halfway through I had to switch to the dub. And maybe the dub just kind of messed things up towards the end. I don't know. But,
no, in general, that relationship is something that
I felt like they had more of a friendship than a loving relationship towards the end. But I don't know. Maybe fighting alongside or fighting for somebody changes your opinion of them drastically.
They have, I feel like, enough moments within the story to justify the romantic relationship. Obviously, by the end, they're like literally espousing, like right at the finale, like how much they mean to each other. But like, there's enough moments, like from when they meet to when like she saves his life and he saves her life, and et cetera, and their final struggle against time and Jigo to save the spirit of the forest. I think there's enough there to kind of qualify their relationship. But yeah, it is one element of the story that kind of feels a little bit underserved, I'll say. But in general, it, like you said, it's a dense movie. Like within the 2 hours and 15 minutes, there's a lot of ideas, a lot of plots, a lot of elements of the world that are kind of like thrown at us, and so it's something that might have been something that they decided it was a little bit. They could have cut down a little bit in the material they may have created for. I digress, but in general, there's a lot to talk about, and so one thing I wanted to ask you about is the visual elements of this movie. So this is like something, a style, very auteur-esque animation style at this point. Probably the most recognizable anime feature film style in the world. Obviously, there's a few more that have cropped up over the years. You know, Mamoru Hosoda films, Satoshi Kon obviously has a sort of style that he's kind of glitched out. I can mention a few others, but they're kind of coming slow. But in general, Miyazaki's art style is one of the most recognizable in the world. So seeing a film in its kind of, native form for the first time, what did you think?
I mean, I think there are definitely, like, Miyazaki's people all have a, like, unique facial structure. So that's kind of the most iconic thing about them, I would say, about his films, is that, like, most of his protagonists have a similar facial structure, female protagonists as well. And then, you have your old man face and stuff like that. Like, they all kind of have, a similar style going throughout them. But for the world itself, like, there were so many moments that just, like, I'm trying to think, like, you start off the movie with this really nice shot of, like, open fields.
It's like painter.
That contrasts hard with the, like, painter-esque. And then gets contrasted really well with the raging demon that's, like, plowing through them. And that sort of art style you become accustomed to within that 30-minute segment. And then as soon as Ashitaka leaves the village, which ends that little segment, you go into these fields that are full of, like, battling samurai, and it's like, whoa, suddenly my visual context for the whole movie has changed all of a sudden. And then after that, it goes into the town, and then the Iron Village, and then the mystical forest, and then, like, there are so many changes to the visual context that you have for the movie, while also remaining within a range of sorts. Yeah,
definitely plays.
I apologize if I'm not explaining it exactly well, but, like, it's there's definitely a way through line in terms of, like, this is Miyazaki's style, but you never get bored of it. There's always something new and unique coming just around the corner. I mean, the most outlandish of them being when the deer god, the forest spirit is killed, and the Nightwalker emerges out from him. Like, the visual contrast there is so, like, disturbing, while not being, like, it's not a cliche of, like,
overflowing
this
drink.
Violent, vengeful god. It's instead just like this horrible liquid coming out and, like, absorbing everything around it. It's so interesting and unique that, like, honestly, I'll probably watch this within the week again, just to, like, look at things and pick up on new little details and stuff like that.
Absolutely. There's, like, a lot of fantastic imagery in this movie. Like, not even, like, exactly what you said, like, something incredibly unique and strange. Like, when the spirit is beheaded, instead of, like, this sort of, like, visceral animal decaying sort of scene, it just becomes like a amorphous fucking blob.
It becomes a nightmare.
And it just, like, sheds the skin of the spirit and just starts to, like, expand and explode onto things, and it's like, whoa. And even at the beginning, like you were describing, like, this movie begins with, like, these gorgeous landscapes and this sort of painted field, and then suddenly out of it just kind of bursts this, like, extremely large boar with, like, these flesh-made writhing worm snakes that are kind of all over it. It's like, it's an incredible sight to start the film with. And in general, like, those flesh-made snakes that kind of define the boars becoming demons, and also the demon arm of Ashitaka, is really interesting. It's something that I don't think would be captured very well outside of, like, this 2D animation. Like, even in live action today.
You say that, but, like, if it's funny, maybe not in live action, but in regards to something more modern. Honestly, a lot of what happens in Sekiro, that game, reminds me of like some events that happen in Princess Mononoke. Like the idea, like what the idea of a demon is, you know, because for my understanding of like English, or I should say Western interpretations of demons are these entities that come from hell to trick or in some cases possess or lead astray people. They're never considered as humans gone wrong or something like that. They're just considered as separate entities. Whereas in this movie and in Sekiro, a demon is more of like a status that is brought upon somebody. Like a god can become a demon if hatred is within them,
like an affliction
or
almost,
like yeah, exactly. And I part of me really enjoys that interpretation because it stands to make a demon as a classification, as like a as something not to look out for, but for something to understand as a disease and as a affliction.
Yeah, and it's like it's made visual extremely well. Like the imagery of it as like this sort of like these writhing snakes that kind of grow and permeate.
Yeah, it looks diseased.
Yeah,
It looks like as I just said, it looks like a disease.
A lot of the character design and things like that, the imagery relating to anything really, like the characters, whether it be in relation to like the spirits in the forest, the little kind of like head shaky guys, which are like rather whimsical, or even the wolves, like who are like, I think they're very graceful in their design, but also they're not sentimentalized. They have this when they bare their fangs, they're not like a very cartoony, fun animal to look at. Like there's an intention to kill, a very deadly creature look to them.
Yeah, and that kind of it helps create a range of like different emotional reaction points. I just made up that term. We're gonna run with it because like there are these towns and these people and these forests that you have a positive reaction to, and then you also have this really dangerous side with like the really gruesome fights, the really dangerous looking animals that come out from the forest that contrast well against the more positive aspects of the film and kind of help to establish this whole world.
Yeah. A lot to take in there. So, I mean, I could definitely, like you said, like rewatch the film and just kind of stare and just see and feel a lot with regards to what was presented. So I feel like that's definitely the trademark of a very well-designed and well-illustrated film, especially in the 2D arena. But yeah, characters. I feel like that's something we kind of could talk about a little bit more.
We can, but I feel like it's better to experience them. We can list them off. I think we talked about Yoshitaka a bit, but like each character just exists for their purpose. Like I wouldn't say that. I don't know. Is there anyone in particular that you think is worth mentioning?
No, we don't have to go into any particular. I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts. Like you asking me that, I would guess I would have to say San, or the titular Princess Mononoke, because I thought it was an interesting title because for the word like Mononoke means spirit of the beast, so it kind of fits more as a description than a name, because San is a human child raised amongst beasts, amongst the wolves, the wolf mother Moro. So like to call her Princess Mononoke is kind of like almost like a title or a descriptor. But yeah, her character is interesting. It's free. Her character is noble as well in her own right. Obviously a little bit more stubborn and wild than Yoshitaka and his sort of like very calm, always determined altruism, but in general still a very interesting contrast to what he brings to the table.
I'd say, like, if anything, San is like Ashitaga's ideal person, and by that I mean like towards the end of the movie and even in the middle, he claims that all he wants is like for man and nature to live to coexist, you know, to be able to live with one another. And if anything, San is like
the personification,
you
of
know, that embodied perfectly, the personification of that, and that's probably why he finds her so beautiful. But yeah, I mean, she again, she kind of exists only as that, if that makes sense to you, or at least in my eyes.
Yeah.
Because like she has her own quest to take out the leader of the Iron Village, as sort of a revenge motive. But I don't feel like she develops past that. You know?
What I think is interesting about that is that I feel like that description of Ashitaka's perspective of San is really valid, where she is the personification of man's successful cohabitation with nature. However, it's interesting because by the end of the movie, they both kind of consolidate like their philosophies, like we love each other, but we cannot live amongst each other every day. We live so differently. Our philosophies and our morals are so differently.
Oh yeah, we can't live together.
You are of like the animal world and of those of nature, and you have to stay with them. I am like a representative and like a paragon of man. So like I'm gonna go and help out, you know, Iron City or Iron Town and have them rebuild. But we'll see each other when we can. And there's this very kind of refreshing freedom to their relationship, which you don't see pretty often because it's not very...
You know, it's refreshing, but at the same time, I would even view it as a tragedy because they can't live together.
Yeah.
Like I recently remembered the story of the Moon Princess.
Yeah.
And how she can't live with her lover, and thus because she has to return to the moon. And even though she gives him the gift of eternal life, he decides to throw it away anyway because he can't live with her. And in that case, we kind of see the same resolution, not with a tragic ending like that, but we see a similar resolution between San and Ashitaka because they realize they can't live with each other because Ashitaka can't abandon his people. Like he I don't know why he latches onto the Iron Village so easily, but he does, and he decides that he needs to help them rebuild, even if it means he has to give up on the one he loves. And she does the same to him. She can't just abandon the wolves. She can't like go back to that. She can't try to pretend that she's someone she's not. And if anything, that reflects the conflict between man and nature, where it's like they need each other. We need nature, and nature, to an extent, needs us as well. But we clearly can't exist harmoniously, you know.
Yeah.
And if anything, that means that the movie has a bit more of a tragic ending that I was giving it credit for.
That's one way to look at it.
Because I thought it ended like, I thought when I first saw it before we started talking about it, I thought, it kind of has like it ends too nicely for everybody. You know what I mean? Like the village is destroyed, sure, but like everybody lives and they're willing to rebuild everything and yada yada. And like the only one who dies is like the deer god who never had any personality to begin with. So like it's kind of hard to sympathize with it. Although Keith David does die, so that is very sad. But
we're talking about the boar?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Unfortunate, but still.
Yeah. And so does Mama Wolf.
Yeah,
so.
Moro.
But I mean, I thought I think having this conversation has helped change my mind in a bit. Yeah, the ending of Mononoke is a bit more of a tragedy than it is a
triumph.
A dramatic good ending. Yeah.
I feel you. Whew. Well, I feel like we definitely aired out most of what's in my thought cabinet right now. Do you have any final thoughts, I think? I mean, is there anything else we should discuss?
The only one I would have, it's a very broad question, but it's like, do you think this movie has a hopeful message about our future within the environment and stuff like that, or do you think it's a bit
I think
too
it is a hopeful message. When we were talking earlier, one of the vibes and kind of like just mental images I thought of is like there's a real Twilight feeling near the end of this movie, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of like when the Lord of the Rings ends. And in that sense, what I mean is like during the end of the Lord of the Rings, it's the end of the third age. They're entering the fourth age, and it's the end of magic in the world of Lord of the Rings. You know, the elves and all the other creatures that permeate magic leave to the gray, the undying lands, and men will begin to kind of permeate their spirit and kind of dominate the land. And in this movie, it's like this is the day is fading where men and animals and forest gods kind of all speak the same language. And by the end of it, it's like there's a period put on that when the forest god, the forest spirit dies and then just is, I guess, lives through the land now. It like paints the entire mountain green where like all the forests were destroyed so that the iron furnaces could be built. And now they have to kind of begin again and kind of find a new balance, but without many of the magical nature that kind of existed within the film, or within that world, I should say. So with regards to like a hopeful message, I would say yes. It does definitely kind of feel like there's a chance again for man and nature and the spiritual world to kind of coexist more harmoniously, and definitely the relationship between Ashitaka and San portrays that to some degree, but there is also that kind of sad bittersweetness to it, that like it will never be perfect. It will never be like two jigsaw puzzles fitting together, but it's something that can coexist at least in a balance.
And do you think something with that kind of message would resonate with, the current hyperbolic kind of mindset and I'm not trying to make fun of it, but I'm trying to like bring up a point where it's
I know what you're trying to say. Like today, there's such like hyperbole in every sort of stance. Like you're either an extremist in any form, and I laugh because it's a movie. I think about the.
Well, I think we like the movie because it's not hyperbolic.
That's what I'm saying. Because it rides the line.
You and
it's modernity.
Are sick of hyperbolic.
It's a moderate film.
Hyperbolic.
That's what I'm saying. It perpetuates a message of moderacy, where it's like you can have both, but there has to be a balance between the two. There has to be some sacrifices made on each side so that the other can coexist. And like in a world that you kind of outlined today with so much hyperbole on stances, where it's like either we all live in the dirt with nature, or we're all super futuristic robot people burning coal to destroy the planet. It's like there is no middle ground, and I feel like this movie kind of represents the harmonious middle ground that could exist.
No, but that's funny. Okay, I have to disagree with you there, because I don't think there's moderation. I don't think anybody has moderation in this film. There are people who desire it, specifically Ashitaka and, to a lesser extent, San. I think San finds that she wants that moderation by the film's end, but because these people don't have the ability to moderate themselves, and nature doesn't either. Nature sees
the boars go to war.
Yeah,
everybody this is like
the boars go to war, and the monkeys are like, man, fuck you, fuck everybody. Like everybody's ruining it. The shit talking monkeys are everywhere, and like that's the tragedy that's reflected in San and Ashitaka's relationship, is that it's something moderation and this equilibrium that you speak of is desired by those with unclouded eyes, a reference to the line in the movie, but it's not possible because that's just not how the world works. And at least through the events of the movie, it's shown that the world doesn't work that way, that humans are going to continue advancing and trying to encroach on nature, and nature will sometimes strike back, but it's just going to be this back and forth, and how do we deal with that reality? I don't know. I would say this movie is a bit more tragic than maybe your interpretation.
I would say
is calling
there's
for
tragic elements, but I don't say it's explicitly. But either way, both, I think, wonderfully thoughtful interpretations. And I hope that some of you listening, whomever makes it this far, can let us know down below what your interpretations are. So, in general, do you have any final thoughts, Chris, about this movie?
No, I think that's good. I think we're good for now.
All right. Cool. Hopefully, maybe we'll get to a few more as the weeks progress, because we got plenty of time, as it were.
We'll do something. I don't think we'll do another Ghibli film right away. Like we have Persona on deck, so we're gonna get to that eventually.
Yeah.
But we'll see what we do next. I think we'll probably do something more modern, maybe an ongoing show, or maybe that freaking harem that you're trying to get me to
The one I
watch.
just mentioned it. I didn't like put a full on sales pitch, but I just said,
No, we're not gonna spoil this podcast with talks of this freaking
All
show.
right.
So let's end it now with that little tease.
all right. All right. As always, guys, thank you for listening. If you guys enjoyed, hit the sub, hit the like, follow us on the social medias, which are listed down below: Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Throw a comment down if you have anything you'd like to mention as far as what you enjoyed about this film, if you got a chance to see it, and etc. Maybe something you'd like us to check out in the future. But as always, stay safe, have a good day, have a good life. The both of us will see you all next time.